You're watching Somme 100, a special 3-hour programme from the Doorstep History team on Big Centre TV. Now, in this section of the programme, we'll be looking at local historian Andrew Lound, because he's passionate about making World War I stories accessible to a younger audience. And here he is as Tommy Atkins, a typical British soldier.
Yeah, it's been very good. It always goes down well with children, which is the children's version of what's called the Odyssey of Tommy Atkins, where we take a generic soldier and for the children's sake, we bring him from the Somme to the children to explain his life in the First World War. But the Odyssey of Tommy Atkins presentations comes in the major variety, where there's two of us. There's myself and the actress Penelope Ferguson, and she plays Tommy's wife, and there's an exchange of letters between us through the whole war, and she becomes a VAD nurse, and therefore you see the lives of two of us change on stage in a 2-hour show that we do, which is quite amazing. And we also have optical effects. We have images behind us being projected, we have movie footage, we have sound effects, and we have the reading of letters and diaries. And the letters and diaries are genuine entries as well from different soldiers. And when the bodies fell, we buried them as best as we could. But of course, sometimes bodies would wash through the trench too. British, French, German, Belgian. You see, there is no difference in the war. But we were cold, so they tried to warm us up a bit. They gave us yet another new hat. This one. There we go. This keeps our ears warm out. But it's still not good enough. So our wives at home, or our sweethearts, would make us balaclavas. This also can act as a scarf, so it's quite a good one. So we can have that. We have our hat and our fingerless gloves. You know why they're fingerless, don't you?
Yeah. No.
So we can use the trigger on the gun properly. And off we march. And then there was this mist. There was this mist covering the ground. It was coming. We thought fog was coming down. We thought, it's ridiculous, fog. And then I saw some of my mates over here, and they were choking and coughing. They were looking at me. Their eyes were red, bloodshot, and they were being sick. They were doubled over and they're dropping their rifles. It wasn't fog. It was gas. They were firing gas at us. It got into your eyes, it got into your throat, your lungs began to burn, everybody had to run for it. They were firing gas at us. So now we had to face gas attacks. Oh, and don't think this was just the Germans. We fired our own gas too, but that could be a nightmare, because if the wind was blowing in the wrong direction, we were the ones that got it, not the Germans. So if the wind was blowing in the wrong direction, we suffered. So they decided to come up with an idea to protect us. Sorry, son. More new equipment. How about this? That's what they gave us to wear to protect us against the gas. Called the gas hood. But it does protect you against the gas. It really does. It does its job. But you can't fight in it for very long, because the eye sockets get steamed up and you don't know where you're going. The thing I learned very quickly regarding history, it's very easy to tell people about history which are simply facts from books. What's difficult is to get them to put those facts into context, and you need to put it into context. And the only way really of doing that is to wear the clothes of the age and to start behaving in a manner which is very similar to what people were at the time, and it gives it a true context. It's one of the problems we actually now have, for instance, in modern movie making, which has a historical setting. but they're still using modern language, or certainly in some cases a modern style, which doesn't make any sense at all, and in fact gives you the wrong impression of what was going on. And therefore, when you're on stage, or if you've been talking to children like this and you're wearing the clothes of the period, and you're speaking to them usually in a way which an adult would have spoken to a child in 1914, they suddenly pick up on it very quickly of what's going on here, and not talk down to anybody as, oh, by the way, I have all this knowledge, because it just simply doesn't work.
I talked to my wife. She met me, and she said how proud she was. Really? What are you proud of? Well, we've been reading it in all the magazines. Here it is. The War Illustrated. She says, it's been magnificent. They've told how the regiments marched across the open field and the Germans fled. How individual men would take machine gun positions. I said, where were these people? Do they actually know what it was like? Do they have any idea at all what it's like? She wouldn't believe me. She said I was trying to make it seem worse than it really was. Nobody believed us. When I went back, I was glad to be back with my mates. This isn't about fighting for king and country. This is about fighting for your mates, looking after your mates. And the shells began to fire. Oh, and they were good shells. The trouble is, the shells fired day and night. So none of us could get any rest because of the noise. So most of us were pretty tired. But it didn't make any difference, because by the time the shell fire had stopped, all the Germans would be dead, wouldn't they? Yeah, of course they would. The shells would blow up their trenches. So we waited on that July day. It was warm. It was very warm. All the trenches were nicely lined up. We'd actually had them cleaned. We had new ladders placed, brand new ladders for us to climb up. It was great. We stood there by the ladder. We waited. And then the whistles blew. Time to go over the top. So our aim was to climb on top of the trench once we got over the ladder, stand there for a second, put our gun like this, and march across the field, where then we would simply take the German trenches. Simple, isn't it, really? The first man to get it was the officer. The officer stood up, one leg on the top, one leg on the ladder like this, whistle in his mouth, and his revolver, and he blew his whistle. He looked around and got shot in the head and fell back into the trench. We all started to move forward, and then suddenly there were machine gun fire against us. The Germans weren't dead at all. The machine gunners were still there. We were all marching in formation. We were being cut down. It was awful. We were just falling down. There was nowhere to go. We then started, of course, to run a little bit to try and get our heads down a bit. But the gunfire was still coming forward. We dived to the ground. Stay on the ground, stay low. We couldn't turn back. You see, the Guards regiments were lined up behind us, because any man who was seen retreating would have been shot by our own troops. You could only go forward, but we couldn't go forward because the machine gunners were being massacred. The Germans were about to attack us, a counter-attack called stormtroopers. Oh, and they're good. They're very good. They came flying at us, firing, so we fired back. But we ran out of ammunition quickly. And when there's a German standing where that man is there and I'm standing here, there's no time for me to reload. It's time for bayonet. Hand to hand, fighting. And believe you me, this isn't about glory. This is about survival. It's him or me. That's all it's about. It's not about country. It's not about anything. It's about him or me. And he's the same. He's not interested in country, he's interested in his survival. So we fight it out. If any soldier says they're not scared, they're liars. You are absolutely petrified.
Kids love it. I mean, they love it, especially when you start giving them the dirty details, like eating rats, or having to poo in the trench, and all that material washes around you, or drinking blood. I mean, the drinking blood sequence I actually tell is actually a true story of my grandfather, who drank blood from a shell crater himself when he was trapped in no man's land, which was quite easy. I thought it was nice to put that in, and they were quite shocked about these kind of things. But in a very comfortable age in which we're living in, relatively speaking, you know, recessions aside, we're still quite comfortably off with food and things. It comes as a bit of a shock. Then you might have to eat things like rats, or eat the horses that you were using originally to pull the guns or pull the carts. When the horse dies, it becomes fresh meat. And these are things that kids love.
The Somme 100 exhibition has certainly enabled many people to discover more about the battle and to find out how it affected the lives of millions of people, both on the battlefield and at home. It's a sad fact that it's easier to find out about those loved ones who died than it is to find out about those who survived. But numerous groups are researching what happened to their colleagues. One such group is Birchfield Harriers Athletics Club. We're here in the committee room of Birchfield Harriers at the Peribar Stadium with Ruth and Stuart. So Stuart, you were pretty much behind winning the successful bid, so tell us a little bit about it.
This is specifically about the World War I involvement, and our club were involved. We've got this plaque which tells us all the names of the people who were involved. The plaque unfortunately has gone missing, but we've got a picture of it so we know who was on the Roll of Honour. The project is to find out about these people and see what they did. According to the plaque, 30 people were killed and quite a few others were injured in various ways.
So Ruth, you've managed to find various photographs of different athletes, and we've got a couple here, haven't we? Who's this one?
Yeah, so that's a favourite of mine. That's Joe Blewett, whose name was actually Charles Edward Blewett, who was a major cross-country runner for the club during the 1920s and went to 2 Olympic Games as well. And he actually joined the club probably right at the end of the First World War, when he was a corporal in the machine gun corps. He was an absolute champion of the club in a lot of ways, and he won national cross-country honours, but he also was very, very popular with his club mates. And in his railway record, there's a little note added, which I think is quite sweet, in inverted commas, in handwriting. It says champion runner. Excellent. Next to his railway record.
And one of the other athletes, Charlie Ray, he was a very fast runner. He used to go out in the trenches relighting fuses. So he was so quick that they could get out there, light the fuse and come back without getting killed. So there are various stories like that, and the title of the project is Running Between the Lines.
And now we've got this other magnificent one. On here it says, went into battle wearing his club's old colours. Look at that, that's fantastic, that is. So tell me a little bit about this man then.
Right, well this is Sidney Burrell, from a newspaper report that he wrote back to Birchfield Harriers to say that he was in hospital, I think it was in Edinburgh, and he'd had a machine gun bullet to the calf of his leg, and it had been shot off, or partly shot off. But we know that the drive of this man was extraordinary, because within 4 months he was back racing again.
Yes, the website for the project is archives.birchfieldharriers.com, and on that site is information about the people we've found out so far on the plaque. Each person will eventually have a little piece about them. They'll have a web page on the World War I peak characters, and it will also have other people in the club, like our Olympians, who we are hoping to get our 100th Olympian fairly soon.
Now as we come to the end of our marathon 3-hour programme here on Big Centre TV, we look at some of our Victoria Cross winners. And the Ladywood History Group is very lucky, indeed privileged, because no less than 3 VC winners lived within a few minutes' walk of this church. Towns and cities with VC winners recently received large stone tablets incorporating the names of VC winners from their locality. A memorial stone to Tipton VC winner Joseph Davies, who is featured at Tipton Library and Museum, is to be unveiled next week.
One person who was involved was Alfred Knight. He survived and won a Victoria Cross for his bravery in 1917. He was born in Ladywood and later moved to Lee Bank, where he died in 1960. That area is being redeveloped and a new street has been named in his honour. Anthony Fletcher reports.
Welcome to Lee Bank, where history is being made. The ceremony is being conducted by a Catholic priest and he is joined by the members of the British Legion in what is the new park known as Park Central. As the ceremony comes to an end, let's go to lighting.
Thank you, Anthony. This is Alfred Knight Way, and the crowds are boarding up for the unveiling. Let's go and have a look.
In the name of God, I exorcise all influences of evil, that they may be banished and driven forth from this place which we are about to dedicate to his service in the power of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen.
The VC medal is here and loads of people want to look at it, including me. There was a policeman there to keep an eye on the medal as the media surrounded the Victoria Cross for a rare opportunity to see it.
This is Chris Sutton, who discovered the story about Alfred Knight.
I've been researching about the Birmingham VC winners, and Chris Nicholson, the local developers, wants to name a road after a Victoria Cross winner. And I knew Alfred Knight was born in Ladywood, but I had to go to the register office and buy his birth certificate to find out he was born in Friston Street.
How proud of your grandfather?
Oh, very proud. I mean, when I was only very little when he died. My older cousin said he wouldn't talk about it at all. I think a lot of men who've been through that kind of experience, partly they don't want to relive it because it was horrible. It was cold, it was wet, there was mud everywhere, there were shells falling, exploding all around them, there were people shooting at them. It was a horrible experience. But also he wouldn't talk about it because he didn't want to be publicising himself, make himself like some people today, they do anything to get on the television. He didn't like that sort of, he was a bit shy, really.
How do you think he would have reacted to the news that he was having a street named after him?
I think he would have been very surprised. He would probably have said, well, I don't really deserve this, because he didn't think he'd done anything special. That was the thing. He thought he was just doing a job. He would have accepted the publicity. He would have come along today if he'd been still alive. But he would probably have made a bit of a joke about it, or he would have said, well, it was all the chaps who were with me that day. They were the ones who really deserve the fame. But yeah, I think it is maybe in a little bit in the corner of his mind. He might well be a little bit proud that, grateful that his city's actually recognised. To be remembered by your city is very very gratifying. It's very much something special.
This is where Alfred Knight used to live, Friston Street. And this is what it looks like today. This street has certainly changed, but the memories of Alfred still live on.
So remembering some of our VC winners there, and clearly names that we shouldn't forget. But for every VC winner, there were thousands of ordinary men who fought without recognition or any honours whatsoever.
Yeah, and of course we remember them all. And we leave you today with one piece of quite a moving account, and it was recorded by youngsters of Ladywood's TNT news team. And it's a day that I'll never forget, actually, is when Lola and Roberto discovered the grave of their great-grandfather. Roberto and Lola found the grave of their great-grandfather. So it says 51150, which was his number.
Yeah.
And what was he? He was a sergeant. So AC stands for
Arthur Charles Robson.
Good, Arthur Charles Robson. He was what was called the Royal Field Artillery. And what do we know about him? He did the guns, didn't he?
Yeah, he was in charge of all the guns because he was a sergeant.
That's right. So it was horse and carriages in those days as well, wasn't it?
My sister has written this poem in honour of our great-granddad.
Dear great-grandfather, I see your plaque on the wall every day, reminding me of what you went through. People are still talking about you now, how great you were and how hard you worked. You fought for our country and died for freedom. You might be unknown to other people, but we have not seen face to face, but I've heard amazing things about you, and I'm sure we'll meet one day. You should be proud of yourself as I'm of you. Arthur Robson, you are my example, my hero and my fighter.